Rick Ross, often known as Freeway Rick Ross, is one of the most notorious drug lords in American history. His rise to power in the 1980s and the subsequent fall from grace reads like a Hollywood movie complete with thrilling highs, devastating lows, and unexpected twists. Unlike many figures in the drug trade, Ross wasn't drawn to criminal life out of pure ambition or desire for power. Instead, his story is more complex. Freeway Rick Ross rose from humble beginnings to build a multi-million-dollar drug empire, only to become embroiled in larger political schemes and harsh realities that eventually brought him down. Ross's life is not only a tale of personal ambition and consequence, but also a commentary on the economic disparities, systemic injustices, and government failures that fueled the drug epidemic in the United States. As we explore the life of Freeway Rick Ross, we'll see how he used his intelligence, business acumen, and street smarts to build an empire, and how he eventually faced the ultimate reckoning that many in his line of work do not survive. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Early life growing up in South Central Los Angeles. Rick Ross was born in Troop, Texas in 1960, but his family moved to South Central Los Angeles when he was young. His neighborhood was one of the poorest in the city, plagued by gang violence, poverty, and limited opportunities. In the late 1970s, South Central Los Angeles was a place of profound economic struggle. Jobs were scarce, and crime rates were high, making it difficult for many families to escape the cycle of poverty. Despite these challenges, Ross had a keen interest in tennis and hoped that sports could provide a way out. He was talented and even received a scholarship to attend a local college. However, his dreams of becoming a professional tennis player were dashed when his lack of literacy was discovered, leading him to drop out of school. With his tennis aspirations behind him, Ross found himself at a crossroads. He wanted financial stability but was aware of the limited legal options available to him. The introduction to drug dealing. It was in this environment of limited opportunity that Rick Ross first encountered drugs. A friend introduced him to cocaine, a drug that was becoming increasingly popular among the wealthier circles in Los Angeles. However, Ross soon discovered a burgeoning demand for cocaine on the streets, especially in South Central LA. He quickly saw the financial potential of the drug trade, viewing it as a way to escape the poverty he had grown up with. Ross initially started small, selling small quantities of cocaine to make a modest profit. But his natural business instincts helped him see beyond just making ends meet. He envisioned a full-scale enterprise. With a keen understanding of supply and demand, Ross learned how to turn small transactions into a highly profitable business. His quick wit, combined with his charm and ability to avoid violent confrontations, allowed him to rapidly expand his business, reaching customers from all backgrounds across Los Angeles. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Building an empire, the crack cocaine explosion. In the early 1980s, the introduction of crack cocaine transformed the drug trade. Unlike powdered cocaine, crack was cheaper to produce, more addictive, and therefore more accessible to low-income communities. Ross was one of the first dealers in Los Angeles to realize the potential of crack, and he quickly shifted his business to focus on it. By cooking powder cocaine into crack, Ross could stretch his product, allowing him to serve a much larger market. With the help of his contacts and the increasingly addictive product, Ross's empire grew at an astonishing rate. At the height of his operation, he was making millions of dollars a week. His business was structured like a corporate enterprise. He had suppliers, distributors, and a vast network of street-level dealers. Ross's organization reached beyond Los Angeles, with connections in other major cities across the United States. The crack epidemic was spreading, and Ross was one of its central figures. Connections to the Contra scandal, an unlikely twist. One of the most controversial aspects of Freeway Rick Ross's story is his connection to the Iran-Contra scandal, a political scandal that rocked the Reagan administration. In the early 1980s, the U.S. government was covertly supporting a group known as the Contras, a rebel faction in Nicaragua fighting against the Sandinista government. To fund this effort, some government officials turned to unorthodox and illegal methods, including drug trafficking. Unbeknownst to Ross at the time, he was indirectly working with Nicaraguan drug traffickers who were affiliated with the Contras. These traffickers provided Ross with massive quantities of cocaine, allowing him to expand his empire even further. Journalist Gary Webb famously exposed these connections in a series of articles, revealing that Ross's suppliers were protected by government agencies because of their connection to the Contras. This connection between the government and drug trafficking shocked the nation and brought new scrutiny to the war on drugs. The fall, arrest, trial, and life sentence. In 1985, the federal government launched a massive crackdown on drug trafficking, and Ross became one of their primary targets. After years of amassing wealth and power, he was arrested in 1989 on charges of drug trafficking. The trial that followed was a media sensation, with Ross portrayed as a ruthless drug lord responsible for fueling the crack epidemic that devastated Los Angeles. During the trial, the full extent of Ross's empire was revealed. Prosecutors argued that his drug operation was responsible for the addiction and suffering of countless people, making him a public enemy in the eyes of many. Despite his lack of violent behavior, the court focused on the widespread impact of his drug trade. Ross was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a punishment that many saw as excessive for a non-violent offender. The road to redemption. Rick Ross finds a new purpose. While incarcerated, Rick Ross had time to reflect on the life he had led and the damage his actions had caused. He began to see his story as a cautionary tale, realizing the destructive nature of the drug trade and the devastation it had brought to communities like his own. Rather than remaining bitter or resigned, Ross chose to turn his life around and work toward redemption. He began to educate other inmates, sharing his experiences and encouraging them to pursue a different path. He became an advocate for education, recognizing that his lack of formal schooling had limited his opportunities and contributed to his turn to crime. Ross started to see his own mistakes as an opportunity to make a difference, using his story to warn others about the perils of the drug trade. Life after prison, a voice for change. Since his release, Rick Ross has dedicated himself to positive change. Rather than returning to his former life, he has become an outspoken advocate for criminal justice reform and the need to address the root causes of drug addiction and crime. Ross speaks at schools, community centers, and prisons, sharing his story and encouraging young people to avoid the path he once took. He emphasizes the importance of education, self-respect, and personal responsibility, hoping to prevent others from making the same mistakes. Ross's story also highlights the need for reforms in the justice system. His case exposed the racial and economic biases that often determine sentencing, as well as the harsh penalties imposed on nonviolent offenders. Ross's life sentence for drug trafficking, despite his lack of violent conduct, drew attention to the inequalities in the justice system, leading to discussions about the need for fairer sentencing laws. The legacy of Freeway Rick Ross. The story of Freeway Rick Ross is a complex and multifaceted tale of ambition, consequence, and redemption. His journey from a struggling young man in South Central Los Angeles to a powerful drug lord, and ultimately to an advocate for change, provides insight into the economic, social, and political forces that fuel the drug trade. Ross's life illustrates the impact of poverty, lack of education, and limited opportunities, as well as the need for systemic reforms to address these underlying issues. His experience also reveals the dark side of the war on drugs, highlighting the unintended consequences and the role of government agencies in fueling the very problem they sought to eliminate. Ross's connection to the Iran-Contra affair underscores the complexities and contradictions of the U.S. drug policy, forcing us to question the motivations and methods behind these efforts. Today, Freeway Rick Ross is more than a former drug lord. He is a symbol of resilience, redemption, and the power of personal transformation. His story serves as a reminder that, even in the face of grave mistakes and overwhelming odds, it's possible to find a new path and make a positive impact. The ongoing lessons of Freeway Rick Ross. The life of Freeway Rick Ross is a cautionary tale, an inspirational journey, and a powerful commentary on the flaws of the American justice system. His story resonates with many because it reflects the reality of countless individuals caught in the cycle of poverty, crime, and punishment. Through his transformation, Ross shows us that it's possible to break free from this cycle and find purpose and meaning in a life once marked by mistakes. As society continues to grapple with the legacy of the drug epidemic and the challenges of criminal justice reform, Ross's life story serves as both a warning and a beacon of hope. His journey reminds us of the importance of compassion, second chances, and the need to address the underlying causes of crime. In doing so, Ross has left an indelible mark on American culture and demonstrated that, even in the darkest of circumstances, redemption is always within reach. The crack epidemic's broader impact on communities. The crack cocaine epidemic, which figures like Freeway Rick Ross helped fuel, left an undeniable impact on American society, particularly in low-income, predominantly black neighborhoods. During the 1980s, South Central Los Angeles and similar neighborhoods across the U.S. were transformed by crack. Crime rates skyrocketed, families were torn apart, and addiction spread like wildfire. The availability of cheap and highly addictive crack cocaine drew people from all walks of life, intensifying the cycle of poverty and crime in these communities. People like Ross, who operated within the drug trade, weren't the only ones affected by the crack era. Countless individuals who had never been involved in drugs or criminal activity became victims of the crime and violence that crack brought with it. Drug addiction spread through entire neighborhoods, leading to overcrowded prisons, broken families, and a generation of children growing up without stable homes or positive role models. This destructive period left a lasting stain on communities, one that many are still working to overcome today. In response, authorities enacted strict war on drugs policies, but these often had unintended and devastating consequences. Instead of addressing addiction with empathy and rehabilitation, the criminal justice system turned heavily toward incarceration, leading to overcrowded prisons and life-altering consequences for minor drug offenders. Harsh sentences, mandatory minimums, and the infamous three strikes laws targeted those caught in the drug trade, but many argue these measures ultimately worsened the problem, especially for non-violent offenders. Rick Ross was one of those caught up in this cycle. He had seen both sides of the system, how lucrative the drug trade could be, and how harshly it could punish those who fell into its grasp. This era taught him hard lessons, which he would later use to speak out against the policies that helped create a generation of lost lives and missed opportunities. Reflecting on the past, Ross's perspective on his own choices. With time and introspection, Ross has had the opportunity to reflect on the life he led and the decisions that got him there. He acknowledges the allure of fast money and the seeming invincibility he once felt as he rose through the ranks of the drug trade. In his early years, it was difficult for him to see beyond the immediate rewards, the money, the respect, and the sense of power that came with his position. But as he spent years behind bars, he began to see the consequences of his actions on a much broader scale. Ross often reflects on the lives he impacted and the harm his business inflicted on countless people. Families, friends, and whole communities suffered as addiction spread. The money he made, the influence he wielded, it all came at a steep price. In his speeches and public engagements, Ross openly admits to the mistakes he made and the role he played in a crisis that would affect people for decades. His life has now become a testament to the power of change. He believes that everyone has the potential to reinvent themselves, and he shares his story with the hope that others can learn from mistakes. His words carry weight not just because of his past, but because he has used his experience to inspire people to make different choices. He tells a story to show others that the pursuit of easy money can come at a cost too high to bear. A cautionary tale educating the next generation. One of Rick Ross's main missions since his release has been to prevent young people from making the same mistakes he did. Through talks, interviews, and community outreach, he actively works to educate teens and young adults about the dangers of the drug trade. He understands the appeal it can have, especially for young people growing up in poverty who see few other paths to success. But Ross has learned that those apparent shortcuts to wealth and respect can ultimately lead to a dead end. Ross's story has become a powerful teaching tool for educators, parents, and community leaders looking to guide youth away from the perils of drugs and crime. By sharing his story, he's giving them a real-life example of where those choices can lead. He also emphasizes the importance of education and opportunity, pointing out how his own struggles with literacy and lack of schooling played a part in his decision to enter the drug trade. For many young people, hearing about his experiences directly from him has a lasting impact, often inspiring them to seek a different path. In communities still affected by the aftershocks of the crack epidemic, Ross's outreach has been instrumental in offering a message of hope and resilience. He's no longer just telling people what not to do, he's actively working to build pathways toward positive alternatives. Through mentorship programs, workshops, and personal engagement, Ross encourages young people to dream bigger, to invest in their own growth, and to build skills that can lead to legitimate success. The story of Freeway Rick Ross in media and culture. Rick Ross's story is one that has captured the attention of the media and the public for years. His life has been chronicled in books and documentaries, and even dramatized in Hollywood films. These portrayals often focus on the duality of his character, a ruthless drug lord in his prime, but a reflective, remorseful man seeking redemption later in life. In 2014, the documentary Freeway Crack in the System was released, providing an in-depth look at Ross's life and his role in the crack epidemic. Directed by Mark Levin, the documentary also delves into the Iran-Contra scandal and the government's alleged involvement in the drug trade. The film explores the political and social context of Ross's rise, presenting his story as part of a larger conversation about corruption, justice, and the failings of the war on drugs. In recent years, Rick Ross has also become a figure of inspiration for rappers and musicians who see his story as a symbol of resilience and survival. However, Ross himself has mixed feelings about how his life has been depicted in pop culture. While he appreciates that his story resonates with people, he also wants to ensure that the lessons learned aren't overshadowed by a glorified image of the drug trade. He's careful to remind people that the high-stakes lifestyle he once led came with painful consequences that he wouldn't wish on anyone else. Rick Ross and the push for criminal justice reform. Ross's story is not only one of redemption but has also served as a rallying cry for criminal justice reform. His life sentence for a non-violent drug crime has become a prime example of the need for change in sentencing laws and the treatment of non-violent offenders. Many advocates argue that the focus should shift from punishment to rehabilitation, especially for individuals whose offenses were driven by economic hardship or limited opportunities. In recent years, Ross has joined the call for reform, aligning himself with others who seek to address the racial and socioeconomic biases within the justice system. He speaks about the need to treat drug addiction as a public health issue, rather than simply a crime to be punished. He believes that policy should focus on preventing crime through education and opportunity, rather than relying on incarceration to address complex social issues. The impact of his case, along with the attention it brought to mandatory minimum sentence in the war on drugs, has contributed to a growing movement for criminal justice reform. In many ways, Ross's life represents a new perspective on justice, one that emphasizes healing, personal growth, and the potential for change over strict punishment. The power of second chance is a new chapter for Rick Ross. In the years since his release, Freeway Rick Ross has built a new life for himself, focused on positivity and purpose. He's turned his experiences into lessons for others, using his story as a platform to speak out against injustice and advocate for those who have been similarly affected by the system. His journey reminds us of the importance of second chances and the potential for growth and change, even for those who have made serious mistakes. Today, Ross is more than just a former drug lord. He is a symbol of redemption and a voice for reform. He's proof that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define one's future, and that even those who have hit rock bottom can rise again to make a difference. He has taken responsibility for his past and is working every day to make amends by helping others avoid the same pitfalls. By choosing a path of redemption, Rick Ross has shown that he's not bound by his past. Instead, he's using it to fuel his future. His story inspires those who feel trapped by their circumstances, reminding them that it's never too late to change and that personal transformation is possible with the right mindset and determination. The enduring lessons of Freeway Rick Ross. The life of Freeway Rick Ross is one that continues to resonate, offering a cautionary tale as well as a message of hope and resilience. His journey from a struggling young man to a powerful drug lord and ultimately to a reformed advocate reminds us of the complexities of human choices and the potential for growth, even in the most difficult of circumstances. He has seen the worst of what the drug trade and the justice system have to offer, but he's come out on the other side as a voice for change and a symbol of redemption. Rick Ross's story underscores the need for compassion, understanding, and systemic reform in how we address crime, punishment, and addiction. It's a reminder that harsh punishments alone don't solve the problems created by poverty and lack of opportunity. Instead, real solutions come from addressing the root causes and creating pathways toward a brighter future. In the end, Freeway Rick Ross's legacy is both a warning and an inspiration. His life teaches us about the dangers of easy money and the power of perseverance. His redemption serves as a beacon of hope for those seeking to overcome their past and make a positive impact. As Ross continues to speak out and work for change, His story lives on as a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit and the potential for transformation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos. Also, don't forget to join our YouTube membership team for more exclusive content.